everyone, Pager here with Cinemilled with the new DJI Force Pro. And I want to give you a quick introduction to the Force Pro, what it is, how does it work, what are the different ways you can make it work. So I got a few different setups here that we're going to go through. But basically, what is the Force Pro? And so, a lot of you might be familiar. This is not necessarily something new. FreeFly has something called the Mimic. And so if you're familiar with that, you know exactly what the Force does. And if you're not, basically the Force is a sensor box, which transmitter, that whatever movement it senses, it replicates in the gimbal direction. So either pan, tilt, or roll are replicated. So, traditionally, one of the more common setups or configurations for these kind of sensor boxes for the Force would be, like a regular gimbal handlebar. So a lot of people set up a gimbal handlebar. They put a monitor on there. I'm going to be using a director's monitor camera cage that I already own. And so this is really nice because I can put the Force transmitter right here. I could put a monitor right here, and I could put a big battery here so I could power the monitor and then also power my video transmitter so I can send the signal to Video Village. And then by holding it, you will pan and you will tilt and even roll, and then the gimbal will replicate that motion. And so this is kind of, the handlebar setup, for lack of a better term, is kind of the way a lot of you are already familiar with using something like the Force. And it's not particularly something that I've fallen in love with using, but that's just me. There hasn't been that many situations where I thought the only way I could get the shot was with a Mimic type device such as the Force. Yet, some people say, oh, well, because it also replicates roll, you can get sort of a handheld look out of it. In my view, I'd much rather just do handheld. If I want handheld, I'll just do handheld. But I could definitely see a certain situation where you would want to give the handlebars with the Force attached to them, maybe to a director or to the DP, and he can sort of control when the camera dutches and do the panning and tilting. One of the problems I found with this, with using the Force system is, if you need to pan 180 degrees, then you actually have to look also at the monitor that may be here, and then you have to start turning your body, especially if you have to go 180 degrees. So anyways, there is of course a sort of pause button where you can hit the button and then reconfigure your direction and let go. And we'll get into that in a second, but that can obviously help in that scenario. But anyways, this is the first configuration, which we could call the handlebar configuration. It is sort of the most common that you may have seen before. And we have a couple other here today to get into. One of them is by putting the Force sensor, the transmitter, on a fluid head, like we have here, you can pan and tilt a fluid head, and the gimbal will pan and tilt just like the motion you're inputting into the fluid head. So this might be extremely useful in the situation where you might have the Ronin on a gimbal or hard mount, on a crane rather, or mounted to a vehicle mount or something like that. And maybe you have a set of alpha wheels or master wheels from DJI, but the DP in this particular day is either not very comfortable using wheels or doesn't know how, or maybe they actually need a faster motion, which can only be accomplished by using a fluid head. And so whatever the need may be, you can put the Force on a fluid head and then pan and tilt. You can adjust the drag on your fluid head and just fine tune the feel you want. And luckily the Force is extremely reactive. Now the manual states that the speed number of 65 on all three axes has been tuned to give you like a 1-to-1 motion ratio. So that's an important note to make. Now there are a few things that can affect that feeling, and we'll get into that in a second. But basically, so you can mount it to a fluid head. So that is a sort of second configuration you can do. The other configuration, which is actually something that is a pretty interesting concept, is you could take it off, instead of using a fluid head, if you happen to have a gear head on set or on your camera truck, and maybe you don't have either alpha wheels or master wheels as part of your kit, you can take the Force sensor box and put it on the gear head, and then operate the wheels, and then that'll give you the corresponding motion on the Ronin 2 or whatever gimbal you're controlling with the Force. And so essentially it gives you wheels without actually having to buy or have either master wheels or the alpha wheels, specific sort of gimbal controlling wheels. You can use a old school, in this case 1950s Worrell head, to control this brand new piece of tech right here. So that's kind of the three basic ways. The other way I have seen it done once before is actually just attaching this directly to the actor, and then whatever move the actor makes, the camera makes also. So you can get pretty creative with this. But in any case, I think what I want to do now is just go through the initial setup and show you how to set it up on in the different configurations, see how it works real quick. I'm not going to go really in depth in this video. This is sort of more of an introduction to all of this. But it's important to note that, of course, it's been designed on the Ronin 2, but it will also work. We have the Ronin-S right here. It's designed to work on the Ronin-S, and it's also been designed to work on the original Ronin, a Ronin M or MX as well. So part of that is, and of course now we can get into what's in the box. Here's the box. You get, of course, antennas, and you get backup antennas, which is really nice for them to include an extra set of antennas. Get a USB cable so you can plug it in to the app, to the desktop application. Actually, that brings up a good point. So when you first power up the Force, it won't let you use it until you activate it. And so the first step is take the USB cable, plug it into the Force, plug it into your computer, download the DJI Assistant desktop application, and then you'll be able to log into there and activate your Force. So that's actually step one. But also in the kit, there is a SBUS cable adapter so that you can connect this to the original Ronin 1 and Ronin M. And so it gives you the SBUS cable. They give you a hardwire cable, which is really cool. It's great that they thought of a hardwire option. Anything that's like of a professional level that's going to go on set that is wireless, I really appreciate having a hardwire option, because sometimes, as good as this wireless system is, and the range on this, I forget right now exactly what it is, but it's like really far. It's more than a mile, I believe. As good as these wireless systems are, there's a lot of wireless signals on set these days. And so it's really great to have a hardwired option. So in case you happen to be getting some interference and you're in, like, if you're on a crane or if you're on a vehicle or something like that, you can just hardwire this thing. And that can save a lot of problems. So they do include the hardwire cable. You get the wireless receiver. It's a very small little receiver box here. You thread in the antenna. There's a couple of mounting quarter 20 and M4 mounting holes on the back, and you can select SBUS or CAN, And so for the Ronin 2, the switch has to be in CAN. If you're using it on the Ronin M or the Ronin 1 or anything that would be using the SBUS, you just switch it over to SBUS. It's also important to note that, as somebody asked me when I posted something on Instagram, will this be able to control the camera on an Inspire 2 drone? So they have tested it. It works. They haven't enabled it in the firmware yet, in the release firmware. So let's just say at this point, it's possible. Let's hope they have time to refine it and they feel it's ready to release in an upcoming firmware. But at the moment, it doesn't. But supposedly in the future, it will. And so back to the receiver here, it's very small. And, you know, it'll included in the kit will also be this cable, which is this proprietary connector here. And so you can click that into the bottom of the receiver, and we're gonna plug that in here to our Ronin 2. And let me find it here. There we go. And then you can obviously do a much better job of attaching it. I'm just using a bongo tie right there. You can directly hardwire it with the mounting points on the back. And so that's it. So now that is connected to the Ronin 2. And that's as much as there is to say about the receiver here. There is a link button which you're going to use to bind the receiver to the transmitter. It's much like binding your Ronin 2 remote. If you've ever done that before, it's pretty straightforward. There is a switch to change it from 5.8 to 2.8, which is nice. Once again, you know, if you're having any sort of interference on one band, you can switch it over to the other band. I think it ships with the 2.8 gigahertz. So just make sure to have your Ronin 2 set to 2.8, which I have. Also important, you need to have your Ronin 2 updated to the latest firmware. The previous firmware to the recent release, I think this release is 103, something like that. The previous firmware will not work with the Force. So you absolutely have to upgrade to be able to use the Force. And so, you know, I'm actually gonna pull this off here right now just so we can look at it. You know, one of the things that it comes with is a mounting bracket so that you can mount it to different things like the handlebars, or in our case, our tripods here. So it comes with a mounting bracket. The battery is built into the unit. Supposed to last like 5 hours or more. I haven't really put it through its paces to see how long the battery actually lasts, but suffice to say, you can use a little iPhone sort of battery charger pack if you want, and then just leave the USB plugged in so you can charge as you use it. If you find yourself using this all day, there is a lock button on the side which locks out all the buttons so that, you know, if you're going to walk away and you don't want somebody messing with your settings, you can hit the lock button so nobody mistakenly presses the buttons or does anything you don't want them to do. There's a power in and a power out on the bottom here. They're the Limos. And, you know, there's a couple of buttons to the side of the screen, and that's how you're going to navigate. There's a rotary dial just like there is on the back of the Ronin 2 where you can press in and out. There's a power button. There's a button labeled sleep, and the C1 and C2. So C1 and C2, you can, it's preset to certain things, but you can actually program them to be whatever you want them to be. They're assignable, which is nice. The sleep button just sort of pauses the unit indefinitely, still keeps it powered up, but you can move the sensor and then the Ronin doesn't move. So very useful in certain situations. There is a pause button. I think by default it's C1, so you can reorient your tripod, and I'll show you in a second. And then, of course, the most important feature of this Force unit is there are speed knobs for each of the axes. So rolls on the side, and then you got pan and you got tilt. So the reason why this is important is frequently, you know, you might do a take and feel like it just wasn't the right speed. It wasn't following at the right speed. So you can just quickly reach up and tweak that setting. So I'm actually gonna mount it here to our fluid head first. And so, you know, the important thing is, you know, I have this long plate here, but this might sound obvious, but you actually want to mount this in the center of the tripod head as possible. And that will make it as nodal as it can be, so that it's actually more reactive to your movements and in the right sort of ratio, let's say. You know, if it's out on the end, it'll throw things off a little bit. So mount it in the center. And so I'm going to go right now, I'm right here, and I'm going to power this up. And it's just like powering any DJI product. Press once and hold. You're going to see it try to connect to the Ronin. And right there, it's showing me that I'm connected. So it's going to show me, essentially this is also the back of your Ronin. It replicates the back of your Ronin. So you can control settings on the Force and on the gimbal from here. So which is great. So if this is on the end of a 60-foot crane, maybe hanging over the side of a building or the water or something like that, you don't have to bring the camera, hey, you know, crane down, I gotta adjust the setting. You can adjust everything remotely from the Force unit. The same way you'll be able to do with the master wheels. So on the bottom of the screen here, there is, you know, right underneath on the left side it says Force, and the right side it says gimbal. So if you press either button, if you go to the right, you can adjust all your gimbal settings just same way you would if you were pressing the back of the gimbal right here. So let me go back here, and then, you know, if you go to the left, those are your Force settings. And then the home screen basically gives you pan, tilt, and roll sort of speed settings where you have your knobs tuned to. And then also there's these little dials that will go up and down depending on your movement. So you can see here that we're active right now. And so here we go. I'm panning. And, you know, one of the things that you'll notice right away when you start to use the Force is, first of all, you have to tune some of the settings. They, of course, in their tutorial video, they say 65 gives you a 1-to-1 ratio of like panning to, you know, of input to output. And while that kind of is true, it may not feel that way. And so it's important to go into the Force settings right here. And, you know, I like to bring my deadband much smaller. Once again, the deadband is how much you can move without there being a result on this side. I almost use very little deadband, unless maybe I'm in a vehicle and it's bumpy, and then so in that case I might increase the deadband. Smoothing. So smoothing is the number one thing that'll throw off the way, the sort of reactionary nature of its replication of your movement. So if the smoothing basically is how hard this hits the brakes after you stop moving. So if I, like I have here, I just pan to the left. If I pan to the right and stop, it's gonna move a little bit after I've stopped moving. So I like to bring the smoothing way down, unless, because, you know, the fluid head already has its own dampening. So I'm used to this fluid head. I've had this fluid head for over 10 years. So I like the way it dampens movement, and I'm very used to it. So I can adjust the fluid head, leave the smoothing at almost a 0, and just use the fluid dampening on the head to essentially for me to do my own smoothing. So now that I got rid of the smoothing, notice it's a lot more direct, and it feels a lot more 1-to-1, you know. So so smoothing is something you're going to want to play with. You know, there might be a situation where you want to actually dial up that smoothing. But personally, I like to have it pretty close to 1. And so anyways, that's smoothing. Let's go here to pan. I'm actually going to turn down the smoothing also on tilt. But yeah, so basically deadband and smoothing are your most, the things you're going to be messing with the most. And of course, the speed settings right here. So, you know, on a fluid head like this, it's very straightforward. You just want it to be able to follow your input. So if you go fast, you want it to go fast. Now, I just have to point out, you know, in the past with other systems like this, you know, the Tilta gimbal has a system like this that it actually ships with. FreeFly has the Mimic. You know, DJI put a lot of effort into this. I love the fact that it's got the external knobs. It's got the screen. I can control the gimbal right from here. But I have to say, it is extremely reactive. I mean, like, really. And you're going to see for yourself when you get your hands on this and you start to play with it, especially as you start to dial in the settings. And so, you know, as I was explaining to you, you know, you may run out of room. And so you can actually just hold this pause button and sort of move the tripod head, and then that's not moving. And then you can let go, and then now it's active again. Right? So it's a way for you to recenter the gimbal, you know, especially like if you're in a vehicle and you're taking a lot of corners, you're going to run into this problem. So I'm actually going to reset it right now. Oh, whoops. See, so I can hold this down, let go, and then bring it to center. And actually, yeah, let me now face the wheels forward here, and there, so that we're dead forward. There we go. All right, so now you can hit the sleep button. You know, you're gonna have to click it and hold it down until the little icon goes red. And so instead of me just temporarily holding down the C1 button, the sleep button, the sleep button actually puts it completely to sleep without you having to hold anything down. Now, of course, I can hold this and then nothing happens here because it's sleeping. And once again, I'm going to mount this as close to center as possible. And that's what I'm going to do right now. So there we go. And all right, so now if I take it out of its sleep, we're both pointing straight right now, and look at that. All of a sudden, now have wheels controlling our Ronin 2 here. And if I can tilt down, and I can tilt up, like that, yep. And it works pretty good. Now, in the question of, does this replace master wheels or alpha wheels? And after playing with it for a while, I put a laser on it. I've tweaked the settings quite a bit. I still very much prefer the alpha wheels or the master wheels to this system. So it's like I said in the opening of this video, if you don't own alpha wheels or master wheels and you're on a job and they just happen to have a set of, you know, actual mechanical wheels like this head right here, this whirl head, then you can rig this up. You could put a monitor right here, of course, and then the operator can have wheels that work pretty good. The advantage of this is that if you have an operator that has used an Airy head for his whole career, it might even be his own Airy head, or maybe you're on a Panavision show and they have a Pana head. It's the same physical wheels, the same head with the same gearbox that they've always used. And so there's a lot that is good about that in terms for the operator to have his familiarity. There is, I would say, a little bit of lag, a little bit of disconnect from when you move the wheels to when that moves. And some of that you can tune out. Like if I turn up, if I turn up the tilt speed here right now, I have this in the highest gearing I can get. Is it 1-to-1? Yeah, it's pretty darn close. The wheels are the actual like master wheels or the alpha wheels is probably still what I would go with. The other thing, of course, the obvious thing I should talk about is you might think, oh, this works pretty well because this is only $1,200. Alpha wheels will run you from $2,200 to $3,000, and DJI Master wheels will run you from $6,000 to $8,000, and this is only $1,200. While that's true, this whorl head costs several $1,000s. An airy head will cost you from $15,000 to $20,000, and you can't even buy a pan head. So it's not really cost effective. If you already own a gear head like I do, this would be a possible interesting option, because then maybe if I'm not using this enough, this might be a good option. The downside, there's obviously a big difference between the gear head and like something like the alpha wheels. The most obvious of which is size and weight. So, one of the ways I have used the alpha wheels before is inside of a vehicle. So obviously this particular whorl head is from the 50s, and it, I don't know, probably weighs like 70 pounds or something like that. And it's extremely heavy, right? So you couldn't get this in a vehicle on someone's lap. So you can do, the alpha wheels are really small. You can mount it on a vehicle right off of the headrest somewhere. It doesn't take up a lot of space. And you can get that going pretty easily and mount it in a tough situation. So obviously the downside of the using an actual mechanical gear head to do this movement is that the size. You have to lug this huge gear head around, whereas with an alpha wheels or a master wheels, it's a lot smaller. You can mount it inside of a vehicle, but ultimately it has more to do with the way the reaction feels. So it's very important to note that I am very impressed that how good it actually works. I don't feel it's as repeatable. So if I do one full movement like there, I have a different angle now between the two. Now that has to do with the speed I have set. So, if I turn down the pan speed, I might get a more equal, I have to, essentially, this is like your gearing, right? I have two gears on my remote head, but the pan speed is like gearing. So you have to find, depending on whatever head you're using, what setting will give you, will maintain sort of the angle between the two as you go. So like right now, the head just went a little bit farther than, the gimbal went a little bit farther than where the head is pointing. So that has to do with me finding the right spot to where I have a one-to-one movement. And, I can tune some of that so that it works better, but definitely with the master wheels and with the alpha wheels, you can get it a lot more exactly where you want it. You can get it a lot more repeatable, But I have to say, I have to give it up. This does work really well. It's just not everybody has an actual gear head to play with at home like I do. So in that case, I'm lucky, but this is like 60, 70 pounds. So it's not really practical to be dragging around. It's more of a museum piece at this point, honestly. So Does it work? Yes, it absolutely works. If you're on set and you're in a pinch and the operator asks for wheels and you happen to have a set of gear head, you know, an airy head on set, you can rig this up and it will work. He will be able to do his shot and he'll be happy, and it's a great option. But honestly, you know, something on the fluid head is probably where I would be using this most of the time. You know, I just brought up operating in a vehicle. You could do that. In a vehicle, I much prefer to use the Ronin 2 controller, the joystick, in our control panel where I can adjust the speed right in real time as I'm panning and tilting. The problem with using a force in the vehicle with the fluid head, for example, what we call a pan bar on some Tekken cranes and stuff like that, is that like as you turn the corner, you're going to have to constantly be resetting the position, relative position of these two items, or else you're having to turn yourself around in the seat. It'll make sense if you try it. You'll see what I'm saying. So ultimately, this comes really in handy when you have this on a crane. I would say this is really where the force is really meant to make its way, make itself worthwhile, is to give the operator an option to use a pan bar, or in our case, a fluid head, as opposed to having to use the wheels, right? So in my case, I have a set of alpha wheels, and if I show up to the job and then all of a sudden the DP tells me he's not really comfortable on the wheels and that he really needs if there's any way he can operate this off of a fluid head setup, and I could tell him absolutely, give me a few minutes, I rig this up, and all of a sudden, now we are panning and tilting. So, that's really all I got for now. Oops, this is turned off. And so just a quick recap again. It will be able to work with the Ronin-S that you see here. It definitely works with the Ronin 2, as you've seen. It comes with the cable, the SBUS cable, to work on the older, the previous models, Ronin models. And theoretically, it might even work on a Movi or something else that takes the SBUS. And like I said, supposedly it does also work with the Inspire. I am really impressed with the quality, the fit and finish of the unit, and most of all, its performance. And so, we have them in stock now. And if you have any questions regarding anything you've seen, if you want me to go more in depth on a specific subject, we can do a couple more videos, showing maybe we'll go off and do a practical demonstration of the Force in action. And so anyways, leave all that stuff in the comments below. Feel free to join our Cinemilled user group on Facebook. It's very active. You can ask me any questions on there at any point. Also, it's good because even if I'm not available, there are other people on there that may be able to give you your answer right away, and you don't have to wait until I get back to you. And so, because I'm always running around. So, Cinemilled user group, really good. And then, of course, we got the Ronin 2 user group, which is another great resource where you can find a lot of help on Ronin 2 related subjects. So anyways, that's it for today. I hope you liked this quick overview on the Force Pro. And head over to our website, cinemilled.com. Under Ronin 2 accessories, you will find all of the amazing accessories that we make for the Ronin 2 and lots of other stuff. We got a lot of vehicle products in the works this year that'll be coming out and headed your way soon. So that's it for today, guys. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you on set.